Andy Choi. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mateo. I'm excited for this conversation, man.
Me too. It's not every day that we get to talk about doing good things in the world, right? And
Yeah.
today I get the rare opportunity to talk with the leader and founder of the Do Good Points company, right? Which is all about giving, all about doing something good for the rest of the people in this world that we live in, right? So I want to get started with the basics, and I want to ask you, what do you do today for a living?
So I am the founder and CEO of Duga Point. Thank you for that introduction. And we are a social impact enterprise that comprises of both a 501c3 foundation. And our mission as a foundation and charity is to support the greater nonprofit industry. And we are also comprised of a for-profit tech company where we build technology solutions like marketing, AI tools, and other things to support that mission, which is to amplify charities and doing good in the marketplace.
How did you come up with this concept? And can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here?
Yeah, I mean, high level, I guess. This was never something that I had some big plan for or anything like that. I always share that it was kind of a personal journey. It's part of my faith walk. Like it was more of a calling than it was, oh, let's start a business, right? Like I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 14. I've had about 7 different startups since then. Anything from retail to manufacturing to tech, obviously, digital marketing and other things. But I've also always been involved with nonprofits, right? So my father's a pastor, so I grew up in a church, and a church is a nonprofit itself. And I've always been involved with my local church, where on the weekends we volunteer, we try to have impact within our community. But I think the personal challenge for me was what do I do on a daily basis on my day job? How is that reflective of my values, right? Like I've always had this ideology that I'm just going to make a shit ton of money. And after I make a shit ton of money, then I can do good, right? Then I can, donate, have impact or do something else. But the reality is that we never have enough time. We never have enough money, right? Like there's something that we can do today that's reflective of the values and the things that we care about. And I felt like in my professional career, what I'm best at, building businesses, technology, and these, figuring out strategies and solutions, I could do something with that skill today, right? So that calling was like, all right, I don't need to wait till I achieve something or do something. Like there's something I can do today because tomorrow's not promised. That fulfills, my purpose, my mission in life, right? And gives me purpose as well. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. And so, um, how can you do something today? How your day to day can become a different thing, and how can you do something today because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow? Is that the problem you were trying to solve when you thought about Do Good Points? Did you see that a lot of people were having the same issue, that maybe they were thinking about doing something but they were just waiting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't want to speak on everyone's behalf, but I think the general like society today, the way we think about doing good, having purpose in life is usually an afterthought, right? Like we are in a consumer market, right? Like marketing and everything that, we're constantly told to achieve something, to be being sold something, right? So then it's always like doing good is always like it's the thing that you do afterward, right? It's the nice to have. It's not the need, right? It's like our jobs, money, all of these things are what pounds us in our face on an everyday basis. And then doing good, like, there's a reason why mental health is such a, is so detrimental in our society today, right? There's a reason why depression, suicide rates, all of these things, like we're in a society that really just pounds us with all of these things that, that we think we should be doing, or like, that think that we should have. But essentially, like life is very simple, right? Like treat others the way you want to be treated, like be a good human being. Like there's, like be kind, be present, right? Like be all of those things I think need to become more relevant. right? And I think it's more important today than it's ever been, especially with social media, technology. Things are moving so fast and so much information is available. How can we make doing good a more relevant part of our daily life rather than this afterthought that comes like later on, right?
What are your thoughts on so there are a lot of nonprofits today, right? What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? How are you trying to help there?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's a really good way to segue into kind of, we have a B2C, which is our consumer market, right? Which is everything we've been talking about from a consumer behavior, but also on the B2B, which is the industry itself of social impact of nonprofit. To answer your question, nonprofits are just incredibly inefficient today, right? What worked in the past does not work now. And I think there needs to be a shift in the marketplace in regards to how the business of doing good operates, because how are we going to solve the biggest problems in the world when we don't have the right resources, when we don't have the right talent, we're not making the proper investments? And then how do we make those shifts to solve those problems, right? To have the right resources, to have the right talent, to have the right strategies and things in place to make sure that we're solving the problem. It's not just putting a Band-Aid on, right? Like homelessness, hunger, climate action. Like you think about hunger and it's like, how much have we really moved the needle forward, right? Like how much have we of that problem have we solved, and why haven't we solved it, right? You look at massive companies that can achieve amazing wealth and impact, but we can't solve hunger, right? Like it's just there's a big gap there, and there's a problem. And I think when it comes to the business of doing good, that narrative and that strategy needs to change.
I have heard you many times say that people are inherently good. Why do you think that, and how do you see the world in that respect, or what's your story that makes you believe that in the core of your, your inner core?
Personally, great question, by the way. I I believe in a God that all created us to be good. And I believe every human being is inherently good. And I think, again, it's the things of this world that really drag us down, that pulls us in different directions, right? And what I mean by inherently good is that we all are capable of love and being loved, right? And one of the biggest, I think, problems in society today is that it's all about me. What I want, how I feel, what my opinions are. And that's one side of it. But we need to really embrace, like, the act of love is giving, is forgiveness, is understanding, is empathy. It that there's a two-way streak. And I believe every person is inherently good, and that goodness comes out in our acts of service, right? In how we participate as a good neighbor, as a faithful friend, as a good son, daughter, whatever it might be, right? And I think that goodness is in all of us, and we just need the opportunity and the mindset to pursue it.
How much of that vision do you think is also influenced by, you said, right, your father was a pastor, and you had a lot of experience in at the church. Did you feel the love back then? Do you remember a feeling of being a child and just feeling something? What feelings can you evoke from there?
Man, it's a good question. And I want to answer that as honestly as possible. And the honest answer is yes and no, because growing up as a pastor's kid is not an ideal situation, in my opinion, right? Like there's just a lot of pressure, double standards. So, but there was a lot of grace and love and understanding as well, right? So I can only say this in hindsight, right? In hindsight, when I look at my parents and where they're at now and who they are, um, they were servants. They served their community. They immigrated from Korea, and in the early first generation immigrate, when they immigrated, like you went to your local community. If you're Korean, you found a Korean church. And practically my mom was a social worker, right? She was just helping them find, get their driver's license, helping them find an apartment, whatever it was. But it was really serving those people. And through that service, you build community, relationships, love, bonds. And it was through that where again, I can see it in hindsight where I was able to develop those, like I saw the value of that, right? Like my parents, like people, they love them, like they're so grateful. And it was because of that act of service, like the sacrifices that they made, I'm able to see that now, like how much impact that has, right? Like again, our life, it should be more than just ourselves, right? Like how are we serving the community? How are we serving others? And that's what I learned from watching my parents like serve and build a community that is faith driven, but also just showing kindness, grace, like giving as much as they possibly could is where I'm starting to see how I've landed here, right? This was my path, I guess, my destiny, so to say.
Oh, it is completely amazing. And as an outsider, what I see is kind of you have that, but also you are an entrepreneur, and also you are an optimizer. You optimize businesses, right? And so it's like you're putting those together, right? You talk a lot about just putting both together and just making profit a good business, right? Is that one of the biggest challenges that you are overcoming, like bridging the gap between non-profit but the optimal uh process and everything that you get from a business minded uh
Absolutely. And I will be, again, very transparent and honest. The nonprofit industry is broken, right? Like the standard that it have, the word nonprofit itself is detrimental to the industry. You're saying that an industry that's supposed to solve the biggest problems in the world cannot be profitable. If it's not profitable, how do you have the proper resources to solve these problems, right? It's doesn't make any sense. And again, I come from the tech space and I wanted everything yesterday, right? Like, and it's like you look at tech is all about data and efficiency systems. Like it's this optimal engine, and the nonprofit is not that, right? And that is the bridge that we're trying to build and the gap that we're trying to fill. And in that sense, to your point, like these problems, they're big, big problems, right? But it also starts from a societal level, right? Like the way we think about nonprofits and what nonprofits should do and how they act and participate in the marketplace and in society is not correct. And I think there needs to be a shift within the industry itself in order to solve these problems, right? So then you look at our business model, what we call ROG, which is a play on ROI, return on investment. We say return on giving. How do we invest into the space? How do we continue to drive greater impact and scalability in order to build a successful business, right? But the biggest difference is that the business that we're building is to solve problems, social impact problems like hunger, education, things that will move society forward, right? It's not just selling another product or another iPhone or whatever it might be. How do we use the tools and the systems in place within the marketplace to amplify social impact rather than just a consumer market?
and it's interesting because you're also trying to bring talent to those organizations, right? Maybe today the best talent, the top 1%, they want to have their own thing or maybe work for Google or whatever.
Yeah.
They are not thinking about a nonprofit, right? And if you turn things around, you could have, I want to work in the coolest, best paying company in the world that is solving hunger, right?
Yep.
How cool will that be, right?
Right. And why can't we have the best and brightest talent, to your point, solve these problems, right? Why do they need to, if they choose a life of service, why do they need to be poor, right? Like in the nonprofit sector, you're ripped apart if you make too much money. But you go to like a Google or something, you're praised for, working at that company and making that salary. Do you know how many people I talk to that say, oh man, I would love to work with you, but I just, I can't deal with a nonprofit salary. And I can't blame them. It is economically for them, they can work at a Google or whatever bigger company, at a law firm, whatever, and then donate. It's cheaper for them to donate money than it is to give their own time. And that's part of the things that we want to solve. Why do we have a for-profit? Because I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's incredibly expensive to live in where I live, right? And I like nice things. There's nothing wrong with that. I like to travel. I like to eat at certain restaurants. I don't need to sacrifice all of those things in my mission to build a company that's doing good, right? Like why is there this double standard? And that's the narrative we want to change. It's like, hey, we can be profitable, build a socially conscious, social impact company and organization, and still give market rates, still build a business, be profitable, and have impact at greater and larger scales. But we as a society, we our standards for social impact and nonprofits. It's like, where's my donation dollars going? Why is the overhead so high? Why is marketing expenses so high? But when we look at the private market space, Salesforce last year spent anywhere from 40 to 60% of their entire annual revenue on marketing. The industry standard is 30 to 40% for publicly traded companies. Nonprofits get chastised if they spend over 5% in marketing, but we expect them to grow and have greater impact. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And you get high turnover rates, poor talent because they can't pay their staff well. There's no reason. It's not a surprise that like the average person doesn't even know the local nonprofit in their own city or like in wherever they're at, right? And it's just these standards, these are the things that we are fighting against, right? This narrative and this ideology that like nonprofits are a separate industry. It's not. Like, they need to operate like a for-profit business in order to have greater impact.
How is that fight coming along? And what do you need to do to succeed? What challenges are you facing?
Man, it's a tough fight. It is absolutely a tough fight, but you know, doing good was never going to be easy, right? It's like anything else in life, anything that matters requires commitment, persistence, discipline. And that fight, it's a good fight, right? All pun intended. And we're fighting it now. I do believe there is a massive shift happening within the marketplace. The younger generation, the next generation, our company mission on the for-profit side is to activate and empower the next generation of do-gooders. And I believe this younger generation, there is a shift in our mindset, in the way we approach things, the way we care about things, the way we value things that are happening, right? We have the luxury to invest into social impact and pursue these things. And we want to make sure that we're steering that in the right way, right? And marketing, like influencer marketing to digitals, Facebook, TikTok, all of those things, those are the things that we participate in and engage with in order to activate and empower the next generation. And that starts with education, right? The ideologies that we have to break down these old ideologies and really figure out, hey, why is the way I think about social impact or like, these problems, how am I thinking about it incorrectly? How can I participate in it, more effectively, right? How do I change the standards in order to solve the bigger problems in the world?
How is education or how is media playing a role today? What are things are working well or not, or working the wrong way?
I think the industry and what media praises in regards to what social impact is supposed to be is just incorrect, right? Like, the media demonizes charities and nonprofits that invest into marketing or technology. Like, there are plenty of case studies. There's a movie that we're supporting called Uncharitable by Stephen Gyllenhaal, which features Dan Pallotta, and it literally shows case studies of nonprofits that invested into marketing, grew the company, but like they were demonized and ripped apart because the overhead was too high. They spent too much money on marketing. The CEO is getting paid too much. The media ripped apart these people and these organizations, but they were having growth and impact. So I think media's part, it needs to change the narrative, right? It needs to it's so easy to judge from the outside in, right? Like to point the finger and says that person makes too much money as a CEO for a nonprofit. It's like in the marketplace, if they, that person is talented, that person's capable of running and building a company that can solve these big problems, but we can't pay them, right? And so I think the media is detrimental to the industry itself because of the standards that it has. So I think this is, again, where we see a window of opportunity. How do we change that narrative? How do we participate within the marketplace like social media and other platforms that really educate the public on how we think about charities, on how we think about solving these big problems?
What role do governments play in all of this? And I'm thinking part of the problem might be that, there are a lot of donations that also have like a tax break thing going on, right? But then for those donations to be effective and have a tax break, are there any regulations that are actually creating those boundaries that you are describing where, you cannot spend that much on marketing or the overhead needs to be, or not really? Are there regulations that are, in getting in the way?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've talked about on this project through Uncharitable is that the government needs an office of philanthropy, because where the nonprofit sector plays into it in society is where the government cannot fulfill, right? On a local community level, like animal shelters, things. But essentially, the government should absolutely have oversight and support the industry that it's filling the gap, right? Right? So we are big advocates of this concept of having an office of philanthropy in order to give the proper resources, structures, and like to make sure that laws are being passed that better support charitable organizations. And I think when it comes to outside of that, like there are advantages. Like there are 1.7 million nonprofits in the United States alone, right? It's number one market in the world with nonprofits. The majority of those nonprofits are BS. They're just tax havens. They're there to like they're shell tax companies or found, whatever it is. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's a better way to manage those things and those funds, right? So then I think there are exciting things happening in the marketplace today, things like DAF funds, donor advised funds that are really disrupting the space, digital giving. Right now, even post-COVID, there's only about 15 to 17% of all giving is digital. The average donor in the United States is 65 years old. Like this is a very outdated industry, and there's a shift that's happening now, right? Because literally as donors pass away, these nonprofits have no relationship or connection to the next generation. So they're just losing revenue because the way that our parents gave, right? My dad will write a check every year to the same organization. That's the way they donated, right? That's not the way I donate. That's not the way the younger generation engages, right? So then as these donors, the 65-plus-year-old donors pass away, these nonprofits, they have no way or idea how to make up that revenue, right? So those are the big problems that we're looking to solve, but also where government support is absolutely needed, right? Going back to your previous questions, like this industry is not at a healthy place, right? We need more innovation. We need more support. We need to change the standards in order for it to grow and continue to scale and solve big problems.
So is there a part of your business where you go more B2B and help those nonprofits attract the younger generations? And if the answer is yes, how do you do that? How, practically speaking, right? What are you doing, and how do you see the younger generations behaving, and what are you enabling through the good points?
Yeah, well, absolutely, we do solve. We're looking to solve those. So we're not here saying and just talking about these things. We're participating in the marketplace to solve these big problems, right? So what are we doing today? On the B2B side, we're a technology company, right? So then we provide digital resources, anything from donation processing, charity data. We have the largest API of nonprofit data in the world. right? We use technology like AI to make sure that we are aggregating content, ratings, reviews, so that we can make all information available through our technology. So then we partner with B2B clients and partners like banks, airlines, so they can process donations. So on the back end side of our business, we are the utility belt for anything and everything cause marketing related. So it makes it easier for an organization or a business to participate in cause marketing, to do fundraising, to build brand equity, because there is nothing wrong with a company that invests into lifting up their brand by doing good. That's exactly how an individual do it, right? If I don't feel like I'm a very good human being, how do I solve that problem? I go out and I do good, right? Then I become a good human being, right? It's like the brand is the same thing. It's okay for brands to take advantage of tax write-offs and these other things by doing good. And they should be celebrated for that. And we want to amplify that. We want to lift that up and grow these programs by being able to work with every business, every Fortune 500 company to grow their social impact, right? So that's on the B2B side. On the consumer side, going back to your point, how do we engage people, everyday people and consumers? It's one of the biggest problems in the nonprofit space is that nonprofits always believe like, if I build it, they will come. If I have a Facebook page, they'll come, people that love animals will come and check out my animal shelter Facebook page. It doesn't work that way, right? The digital space is not a democratic space. It's pay to play. You have to drive traffic to your page. You have to produce content. You have to market yourself. Again, and that takes manpower, skills, technology, and resources in order to do that. So then we provide and build these solutions in order to participate in Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, gaming like Twitch, right? So gaming is a huge vertical. We go into the marketplace where people are, and especially particularly the younger generation, are spending their time, things that they care about, things that resonate to them, that are part of their identity. We go into that marketplace and then we show, like, instead of just selling them something, it's like, hey, did you know that you can do good? Did you know that you can volunteer here? Did you know that you can donate, by doing these things and engaging them in places like gaming or a concert, a movie, or whatever it might be, in order to engage that activity? Because that's what makes it a daily consumer behavior, right? Like, how do we participate in the marketplace to do good rather than just sell products, rather than just do these basic things that are so prevalent, right? Like, we have to engage them where they're at.
And make it super simple, right? I mean, where they are, and make it like that's what we're
Super simple.
expecting. We
Yep.
live in an age where, I don't know, just make it a one-click thing, right?
Yep. That's the beauty and the curse of the internet, right? We want everything right now, right? And it's like everything should be so simple, and that's okay, right? It's why we scroll forever, right? Like, we can say, because they've made it, you got some of the smartest people in the world, they design and build these things, and that's exactly what we want to do. But what we build and what we design, we want it to be for doing good. You, you, we're not trying to change the industry, right? We want to participate in the industry, but be a beacon of good, of hope, not just evil and negativity, right? Like, it's like, to your point, like, how do we make it so simple, right? How do we make it so easy to do good, right? And that's the hard part, right? Like, that's the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Like, and to your point, it's like, it's not easy.
How do you build trust, right? Because let me give you an example. I go to a supermarket, and the lady at the cashier, I still use many times. I still use the cashier. I want to have
Yeah,
that interaction, but she asks, "Hey, do you want to donate?
a dollar.
$3 to whatever, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And then I talk to someone, "Oh, you donate there?" "Yeah, no, they take all the money and they do blah blah blah." And
Yeah.
there's like, I don't know, right? I mean, I think people like to think that donations are doing weird stuff with the money or whatever. So there's a trust issue right there. Very simple example, a trust issue. How do you build trust in social media with everything that's going on? With, you know, everything spreads out so fast or slow, right? But How do you do that?
Yeah, well, trust is the number one problem, right? To solve for, because we do these massive research studies and data findings, and we found that, the consumer, particularly the younger generation, they don't have any trust. One interesting thing that we found years ago was the younger generation actually do not care about nonprofits, specific nonprofits. If anything, there's no trust there, so it's a barrier for them to do good. What they care about is the cause, right? So I don't care about Sierra Club. I care about climate action, right? And that's a big problem, right? Because there's no trust to the nonprofit, but they care about the cause, right? So then how do we solve for that, right? So going back to it, we're a consumer market. We want the research to be done for us. We want it to be one click, very easy. So then we will build a product like the Climate Action Fund, where we take data within the marketplace, the highest impact organizations, the most like trusted, the most transparent, whatever the standard is, we'll aggregate that information, and then we'll create a fund that says Do Good Fund Climate Action, where it has the top 3 or top 5, 10, whatever organizations that are solving for climate action. So then it becomes like, okay, then I can donate to that. It's one click, very simple. It goes to your point earlier. Then I don't need to go and think about all the research, or do I trust this organization? We're solving for that problem, right? So then I think from a product level, those are the ways that we're addressing that trust issue. I think when it comes to the consumer side, that's all, again, this goes back to the point I said earlier. We have to change our ideology of how we think about charity and donations, right? To your point, when you're at the grocery store and you're giving that $1, $10, whatever it is, you're like, where is this money going, right? And it becomes a trust issue, and you're like, it makes you not want to give it, right? Even if you wanted to give it, you're like, I don't trust this organization, right? And I think that's the double standard that we have and I feel the same way, right? It's the double standard that we have for the nonprofit industry, right? When we buy something at a store, we don't ask all of these questions of like, where's this money gonna go to when they profit from it, right? Like, it's like there needs to be a level of a standard in the industry itself, and we need to empower it in order for it to thrive, right? And what we want to do as a charity organization is the world needs less nonprofits, in my opinion, right? The last thing we need is another nonprofit. There are amazing people and organizations that are driving impact in the marketplace, right? So then how do we invest and give more to these organizations, right? So then that barrier at the grocery store, one, starts up from a product level where we can create funds or find high impact organizations to make sure, funds are going to the proper place, but also change the narrative in society where it's like, hey, that $1 does make a difference, but it's okay if it's spent on marketing. It's okay if it goes to overhead, because that marketing and that overhead goes to support the organization that's trying to solve this problem, right? So I think there's two things that need to change there. Those are the two things that need to happen simultaneously in order for the shift and greater impact to happen.
How important is the whole leveraging influencers? It's huge, right? I look at younger generations and the way that they trust, they when they trust someone, they trust everything, right? Yeah. There are legions of fans following Taylor Swift. I mean, if she said donate on this one, I'm sure, boom, everyone will go there, right? Is that important? Is that something that is very important for you? How do you leverage that? How difficult it is or easy it is to leverage that?
Yeah, we are. That same research study that we did, the number one way to build trust is if it was referred by someone they trust, right? Because trust is something that's transferable, right? Just like a relationship. It's like, Mateo, a friend of yours is a friend of mine, right? Because there's trust, right? There's dialogue between you and I. So then automatically your wife, your brother or something is someone that I can build a relationship, that gap. It's the same way when we talk about influencer marketing and how like the importance of that when it comes to social impact and cause marketing is absolutely critical, because someone I care about, someone I respect, I follow, whatever the word is, if they are doing something and that is positive or supporting a charity organization, it automatically builds trust just through association, right? So we want to leverage that as much as possible. But we also, again, want to go into the economy of like the creator economy space and say it's okay to, like, hunger is not just the issue in November. Like it's like Black History Month should not only be in February, right? Women's International Day and like gender equality should not just be an issue in March, right? Like these are problems and things that need to be solved every day, right? And how do we make that relevant? It's like through influencer marketing, getting creators and influencers to talk about it regularly rather than once a year or twice a year, right? Like make it part of their economy, but also the way they drive revenue, the way they participate. It's okay to make money off of marketing for a nonprofit. There's nothing wrong with that. But you look at the average consumer, it's like, hey, this celebrity did this and they made money off of it, and they will be chastised for it. They will be demonized for it. And we're like, why? But you're okay with them making millions of dollars selling a Pepsi or whatever, but if they made a little bit of money or like was given resources or whatever to do good, they're demonized for it. It's that double standard again, right? Because to your question, is like, it's so important for us to work with influencers, people of status, celebrity, in order to build trust. But the market and the consumer, like society, limits what we can do. So then you only see, once a year during Christmas or Thanksgiving, a celebrity would do something, and that's it. We need to change that standard in order to build trust and build it faster and have greater impact.
Yeah. If someone wants to get started today, they are listening and they are getting excited and they say, okay, I want to do something. What can they do?
Education. One, how I think we need to look at ourselves and identify how do our relationship, our thought process when it comes to nonprofits, cause marketing, all of these things, to your point earlier, when I'm at the grocery store spending $1, those thoughts, where do they come from? Where do they stem from? Right? And how can I shift those ideologies and those thoughts and those kind of biases that I have in order to support the greater nonprofit industry? Again, there's a movie called Uncharitable that I highly, highly recommend. I also recommend to go watch Dan Pallotta's TED Talk, 17-minute TED Talk, the most commented TED Talk in the history of TED Talks, to go check that out and just really like change the way we think about cause marketing and nonprofits, right? And that, I think that's step one. Step two is there is something that anyone and everyone can do today. Like doing good is not like, oh, when I have, maybe one weekend out of the year, I go volunteer or something. Like find something that can be incorporated into your daily life, right? Like an act of kindness, connecting to a nonprofit, volunteering once a month. There is something that speaks to your life and that is important to who you are as an individual. It takes time, investment, and resources to identify that, just like anything else in life, right? I think creating space and time in order to identify that is incredibly important, right? And the last thing I would say is there's this ideology was called effective altruism, right? And it's complex, but the basics of it is that if I have $10, where can I spend that $10 to be the most impactful and effective way to use that $10? But it also works for time. If I have 10 hours that I can volunteer or give, what's the best way to use that 10 hours? And you can make the argument that says, hey, maybe I go volunteer at a soup kitchen, right? And maybe that's very effective, but theoretically, that's not what you get paid. An engineer gets paid to be an engineer, right? A musician gets paid to be a musician, not to be at a soup kitchen, right? And it's like, great, if that soup kitchen serves something else, like as far as you making a connection, then great. But outside of that, the long-term effectiveness is what you do best, right? For me, like volunteering with my church on the weekends, it makes me feel good, but it's not where I have the greatest impact. it was to start this business. It's to do what I do best, utilize technology, bring together people and teams and strategize to solve big problems. Every individual has something. Use what you do best to have social impact. There are nonprofits that need engineering, that need design, that need, there's something that whether you're a celebrity and I have a platform, like there's a platform and a skill that you have that you can give today to have the greatest impact that you can have. And it takes time and energy for you to figure that out and figure out a way to do it. And by all means, reach out to us at Do Good Points, and we'll love to help you discover that good.
You're giving me homework. You're making me think, and you're giving me home, which I like. What new technology gets you excited that you think can make an impact in your world?
I am incredibly excited about AI, right? And this is not because it's the new shiny object. It from the very beginning and the genesis of Do Good Points, we're always bullish on AI, and it's something that we've invested into, and we've been building this for a long time because nonprofits have a marketing problem. They're not able to produce content and education and things at a rate because they're understaffed. They don't have resources and technology. So we're building solutions right now where they can automate a lot of these processes. Because what is technology? It's an amplification of what our human ability is. It makes something, like when Google search first happened, it's like it made us faster to search and find the information that we want. Now with AI, we can generate content and market faster and at a rate that can really change the nonprofit industry. Because a lot of one of the biggest problems nonprofits have is that they don't know how to educate the next generation about what they do and how what they do is important and how they're solving problems, right? So the technology I'm incredibly excited about is AI and generative AI and how we can use that to support the greater nonprofit industry.
One last question, I promise.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to ask this one, but what do you do when you are not working? Do you get, downtime? And if you do, what are you doing there?
Man, thanks for asking that. I love to travel. So like right now, I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. This is my first vacation. It was like our busy season is at the end of the year, and I just need to get away to like think through our planning and strategy for this year. I just needed a new environment. So I love to just travel. I love to disconnect and just work out and just be in my own space to meditate, to just, I think, like everyone else, everyone's so busy. Everyone has 1,000 things to do, so much pressures in the world, like to disconnect and like just really focus on ourselves, to pray, to meditate, to, make sure that, we're present, right? To feel gratitude, to rejoice in the, blessings that we have today instead of just constantly waiting for the next thing. And I feel like traveling gives me that space and it puts me into that state that allows me to do that. So it's one of my favorite things to do.
I love it. You are officially invited to come visit in Uruguay in South America. There
Oh,
are
I love that.
beautiful places where you can like relax. A few come to mind that have very few lights at night, and so you have the full sky, right? It's at the beach, very zen mode, right? And you're just trying to be in the moment, right? So
Yeah, man. I'm gonna take you up on that offer, Mateo. I'm gonna do a follow-up episode to this
yeah,
and travel with Uruguay.
dude, we can do a video. There's
Yeah.
search this out. There's this place called Cabo Polonio.
Uh-huh.
And other places, but that one is very kind of mystical and typical. And we'll talk further about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. For sure. I
Andy,
love that.
this has been amazing. I appreciate you taking the time. Honestly, I feel very passionate about what you're doing and inspired. Inspired is the word. I feel inspired by what you're doing and to do something. And honestly, with my audience and I am the type of guy that thinks about doing something and doesn't do it or does it once a year, right? and you're giving me a lot of ideas. And what you said about effective altruism and actually using what I'm best at to do something, right? And not just make it more effective, right? Not just
Yep.
do something to feel good some time of the year, but you know,
Yep.
being more effective about it. So thank you so much, and I hope that we can sometime do another episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I love the fact that you're challenged by this, and we all should be. It's the beginning of 2024. It's a new year. Every day is a new opportunity for us to do good and be good, right? We will be measured by our actions, not our intentions, right? We're not guaranteed tomorrow. So I think there's something, some like just be kind, be present, and Happy New Year, brother. Thank you for having me.